All right. Well, Bo, when do you want to put this on your head?
It's a birthday hat.
Whose birthday is it?
Bryant Smith's
Thanks.
birthday is tomorrow.
Thanks, jerk.
Happy birthday
Happy almost
to
birthday.
you.
What are you going to be, like 13?
Mentally, yeah. Physically,
He
When
grows
after
you
bass fishing for
in
10
negative dog
years.
years.
when you
How do you
fish,
know his birthday? I don't even know his birthday.
yeah,
'Cause
makes
he's
you
a
look like a
friend.
really good friend, doesn't it?
No, it's like
We've
I like
literally celebrated
purposely try
my
not.
birthday during tournaments before. Cumberland, we went out because it was my birthday.
That's right. Because they canceled it.
You think you'd know
I'm not
somebody.
super good at birthdays anyways.
I'm only
but
good
I
at
don't really
remembering
feel
them
like-
when they pop up on Facebook. And then I feel
that
bad
guy.
when I miss somebody's birthday. So I put it in my calendar. I usually put in 2 a year so I don't forget them for the rest of my life.
I love people's birthdays, so I remember them.
I have to
Thanks,
remember that
Bo.
about you. It makes me feel bad.
When's your birthday, Bo?
You are listening to the Alpha BassCast with Jake Boomer, Bryant Smith, and Bo Fletcher.
Because I
So-
personally,
Do you feel like that your birthday is falling on the first day of your career for the year? Do you feel like that's a good thing, or do you think that's a bad thing?
We'll find out tomorrow. Because
I think
I've
you're going to have a little
usually-
birthday luck going with you.
I need it. It's bad. I can't remember the last time I was actually home for my birthday. It's been a while. Like, my parents came up before I left, and my mom brought a cake. I'm like, what's that for? She's like, oh, it's for your birthday. Oh, yeah. I always forget my birthday because I'm never home. And Jake just forgets
just
my
means you don't
birthday
get
because
older.
he's, a jerk.
matter of like, it's a matter of course. Like, the question I really had, and I've asked your mom this before, was, were you a happy accident? Were you an accident? Were you an unhappy accident?
Were you a, oh no?
Hey.
You were an oh no,
Depends.
weren't you?
Because I know that your
Who
brothers
you
and
ask.
sisters are quite a bit older than you.
Yeah.
It's been said
Well,
a
yeah.
number of times. Everyone's like, oh, you guys are like brothers. And I'm like, no, we're not. Because I'd have strangled him at birth. Like,
Yeah. Strangled him at birth.
we'd have never gotten out of the first year.
If I had $1
enough
for
of
every
this.
time you said that, I would be well.
Like once a day.
That's literally like if we go to meet somebody, that is your. Hi, I'm Jake Boomer. This is my idiot brother, who's not really my brother, because if he was, I would have strangled him at birth.
It strangles you at birth. Yeah, that's right.
He needs some new material.
I know.
At least he's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
He is consistent.
Well, new for this podcast will be the fact that we are doing this without a guest. So as we endeavor the podcast world, we are going to talk about current affairs, which I think is important. And then we're going to cover some controversial stuff because there's a couple posts. So I thought, maybe we would talk about some things that I think are somewhat unspoken, unsaid, that I feel I have an opinion about. And then maybe lay the groundwork for a couple of our future guests coming on. One of them being a psychologist, PhD psychologist, who is deep into the sport itself. I think it'd be pretty cool stuff to listen to. So you can press the record button, but I know you already have.
Bryant disappeared.
No,
Right.
I'm. Hold on, I'm here. I swear, I'm back.
I see him.
I'm down on the river.
Real quick,
Okay.
Are you on Wi-Fi or are you on?
I'm on cell phone. Oh no.
Okay.
Oh boy. I'm disappearing.
You're here. You're here.
I
Reappearing.
see you.
Hey, do I need to be this way or this way? I'm good at this podcast thing.
Sideways.
This way? Sideways.
Sideways.
Right.
Yeah. Because if you
Right.
don't go sideways, You're gonna have a gigantic head when I cut this. But why isn't it changing? You have your landscape lock on or whatever.
This is the kind of stuff that needs to be on the podcast.
Is it?
For the Alpha BassCast to work throughout the year while Bryant is traveling, we're going to have some of these random BassCast disasters, dumpster fires.
Yeah. Yeah. Current events.
Bryant.
How's Florida?
Yeah.
Cold. Not good. Bad.
Isn't it that way every time you go?
Dude, we were 3 days away from it being really good. And we showed up. And naturally, like, I'd literally been watching the weather for the past 2 months. Because you can kind of track when the fish are spawning here. Because they start in, like, South Florida, they'll start in November. But all of Florida, like, it's not uncommon for them to start in January or early February like it is now. And they probably started a month ago. And now we have another cold front coming through. Perfect timing. It's been beautiful for 2 weeks. But, of course, Bassmaster shows up on the St. John's. And we get the cold front of the century down here where it's going to drop into the 30s. Tomorrow, I'm hoping can be okay. I think guys will catch them tomorrow, but you're going to really have to adjust throughout this tournament as it gets colder. But it's kind of a cool tournament because it's I don't think a lot of guys are going to have, it's going to be an even playing field, I think, just because it's so unknown and it's so much change going on.
Huh. So you're going to sandbag. So you're saying is you're going to weigh like 22 tomorrow.
I hope so.
And then we're going to get back on the cast.
I mean, it's his birthday.
Sandbagger.
If I can catch 22 tomorrow,
I'm going to make him a sandbagger shirt.
If I can catch 22 tomorrow, by the grace of God, I don't think I need to worry about making the cut the next day because I'm pretty sure 22 a day is going to be inside the cut line.
It doesn't take as much weight at St. John's to win as I used to think. I think it's been 72 to 73 for 4 days.
Yeah, like it can take some really big weight.
It's not like 100-pound days.
No, it can take some big weight to win, and it usually does. But what happens is the weights fall off really, really quickly. Like there was a year where 9 pounds a day got a check, got inside the top 50. So it could be another 9 pounds a day.
Give us a rundown on the new pay scale for people that haven't paid. Because I know that it was announced it was different, and you guys were, man, I got to get to 48th to get a check, and then you guys made a small change. So what is a check line for you right now?
So it's back to 50. They changed it back to 50. They lowered. They went to no entry fees, but that pay scale was ugly. I don't even. Nobody can dispute how bad that pay scale was. So we're ending up, we're going to pay $10,000 over the course of the year. That'll be our entry fees, but then it's $5,000 to 50th place. So we basically got $35,000 back in our pocket going into this season, but the payout didn't drop very much, and we still have those survivor checks. You know, the guy that's just not on them, and he manages to figure out enough to get, make the third day cut and make $5,000. So, and then they kept the top 10 pretty heavy. Still $100,000 to win, but I think everybody's pretty happy with how we ended up working it out. We have an Anglers Association, the APP now. I think that's what the acronym is. where it's the Bassmaster Elite Series anglers. We're all in a group, and we have representatives. We're like split into 5 or 6 groups. We have representatives from each group, and they go and talk to bass on our behalf, and we kind of work back and forth. And it's been a pretty positive change for everybody in Bassmaster.
That's cool.
Cool. Was the overall? I know you guys had your first meeting today. Was the overall feeling pretty good? Like, are we going to go into a controversial first tournament and listen to a bunch of, like, I hate to say it, but the last tournament, the drama of the last tournament totally took away, in my opinion, Bobby's win. I mean, like, totally stole the show. Bobby's win was amazing. I think that dude's awesome. But I feel like it was overshadowed by them.
It was.
Do you feel like you bass guys are going to play nice in the sandbox?
I hope so. I mean, I always play nice. I always try to, just go out there and fish. But sometimes people like to be in front of the camera and like to take away from other people's success. It reminded me, obviously not to the crazy extent of it, but when Clifford Perch won the U.S. Open and that guy was shoving weights down the fish's throat, got caught that tournament, nobody even remembered that Clifford Perch won the U.S. Open. And it was so bad for Cliff, because he deserved all the accolades and all the, celebration that he won the biggest tournament, one of the biggest tournaments in the country, and he got overshadowed by some idiot trying to cheat. I hate it when stuff works out like that, because the guys that win don't end up getting their due celebration, what they earned. So hopefully we play nice.
Because I did not know that was Clifford Perch that won.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that was Clifford. You're right. But I do remember pretty clearly that I think that was Billy Egan's first tournament when that happened. That's why we got to get him on here, because I think it was his first tournament where somebody walked around and said, hey, some of these fish got extra.
Why are all these fish thinking
I have a theory behind cheaters.
Extra.
Yeah.
Got extra.
I have a theory behind cheaters that that get so far out of hand, like those guys that cheated in the walleye tournament. Like, you'd think at some point they'd quit, right? Like, okay, you got 9 of those weights in there, it's probably good. And then they stick 6 more in. It's because they've been cheating for so long, the weight of the gilt. I feel like gilt, it's like a 2-ton truck that's on your back, and it get to the point where I feel like they get to the point where they keep shoving them in there because they want to get caught, so they can get just released of the guilt that they carry. That's my take on it. You got to be a sociopath to think it's okay to just cheat your way through all these tournaments. And so I think a lot of these people are like, cheating at first was like, I shouldn't have done it. But then as they get so far into it, they just, please catch me. Please put me in jail. It's like, it's almost like they're admitting that they did it. Yeah. Their team partner's like, hey, bro, you don't need 19 in there. And they're shoving another 3 in there. You're like, like that. How many weights did they pull out of that guy that cheated in the, how many weights were in those fish? It was insane, right?
For the walleye guys, yeah.
Which fish?
They would
the U.S. Open or the walleye?
The U.S. guy, the U.S. Open guy. I can't remember his name. We should look it up.
I mean,
for
I don't
accuracy.
know. There was Mike Hart, I think, was his name.
Yeah. The legend. He was a legend until that happened.
But anyway, let's get back to
all right. Off
positive.
topic. I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And the meeting was good, right? You guys had your first meeting.
Meeting was good
of the season this year, or this today.
Yeah, it just felt like a normal tournament meeting. It was nice. No drama, no name calling, no yelling, not that really ever happens anyway. But yeah, it was good. It was good to see everybody. It's always so weird because you spend like 6 months out of the year with all these guys, and then all of a sudden it's just, I'm not going to see you for 6 months or 5 months. So it's good to kind of catch up with everybody, see everybody, and just, we're all excited to get it started.
How much mayo did you eat tonight?
0.
What'd you have for dinner?
We went to Chili. David wanted to go to Chili. So we went to Chile. I love Chile.
You started to say I've been on
I've been on a health kick. We've been toning it down on the mayo.
health kick.
On your way to Chili's, you've been on a health kick.
I want to know what Bryant Smith health kick looks like.
No, you don't. It's annoying.
Just well,
Oh,
so
I
I
definitely
went
do.
from the.
I want to watch
went
Jake
from the,
get annoyed by your health kick.
I went from the full calorie whole mayo now to the olive oil mayo. Same amount, but it's a healthier
Ooh.
mayo, so that's got to count. And then everybody knows,
Right. We got rid of the hydrogenated oil.
Yeah, we went for the olive. Yeah, and then instead of drinking soda, we drink Coke Zero. So that obviously cancels out some of the bad stuff that I eat. Everybody knows that's how that works.
Nobody wants to hear about your diet.
Nope.
Hey,
I'm good.
I'm down like 30
we're at the point in this
from the end of
podcast
last
where I can
season.
honestly say, yeah, nobody cares. It's about bass fishing.
It is bass fishing.
That's right. It's
Well,
about
I'll tell you
bass
this.
fishing.
Now that
I'll talk
weigh
about
this, my doesn't hurt as much.
your
No, it
skeeter.
doesn't.
Your skeeter will go 65.
I got it up to 71. Phoenix jerk.
You can.
That's 30.
He
like
lost that
all-
30 pounds. You can outrun my Vexus now.
I just
I could
alienated
literally
every
outrun
skeeter
your Vexus with
fan
my
in the-
feet.
You did. Probably. You know how you get a Vexus to go 70, right?
Behind a truck.
You put it on the trailer.
Pull it behind the truck. That's awesome.
Exactly how you do it.
So,
You ever
are
notice-
you guys ready for me to bring up a topic I want to really dig into tonight?
Dude, I know you've been waiting.
I can't wait.
Here
It
we
was
are.
like a conspiracy theory. Because now, being a conspiracy theorist is like, it was a bad thing until the election, but now it's like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe not
No.
crazy.
You can go all in.
Well,
Right.
is it a conspiracy
So,
theory?
because a
It's
couple,
true.
This is
that's
Sonic Blam's conspiracy theory hour.
that's the point of this podcast, was for you guys to either agree or say it's not true. Is it
Love it.
really a conspiracy if you guys don't agree? But there was a comment on our last podcast about our co-anglers. Is it a random draw for co-anglers? And before we get into that, I think we should talk about the way the sport is evolving around co-anglers again, but at maybe a higher level since we've all been around for a while. And why we think I love co-anglers. This is not about co-anglers. It's about where they fit and what the sport looks like at the sport level. Because I know Bo knows a lot about the inner workings of like the higher leagues, BAM, the way that Bo is like a planning genius that is probably can't talk about a lot of stuff he does, but he'll understand that dollars and cents of tournament organizations are really, they're more complex than we think, right? So before you can get into the co-angler thing, I got to preface this. We're going to talk about 2 or 3 different angles of this. Hopefully Bryant will try to argue with me and then fail miserably the day before his birthday. But we'll go through 2 or 3 of these things, and then I'll kind of see if I can weave it into some psychological stuff, because I've actually had really good conversations with Dr. Jay McNamara, who I hope we can have on here in a few weeks when Bryant's tournament stint is over. But so I'll just get started. Co-anglers, I think, are really important in the sport. I think back in the day, before there were so many clubs and so many other opportunities, a lot of people are like, this is how we get new blood into the sport. My argument is that most co-anglers that are at the higher levels, this ain't their first tournament. I think there's some of them that are, and there's some of them that aren't. I think it's really a good thing. But I think you have a different weight of co-anglers as far as skill sets go. And so as co-angler counts have gone down, you've seen the leagues change the way they do things. Because remember, like Bryant and I can remember this, trying to get into the opens, you had to have an equal match of co-anglers to pros, right? Mm-hmm. Right? That's how we had to sign up. You had to sign up with a co-angler.
Yeah.
They would never let us out without
link.
a co-angler, right? Remember that? Yeah. So before COVID happened, you could never have a boat that didn't have a co. And the reason for that, they told us, was for honor and integrity. These are in non-shared weight tournaments, but your co-angler policed your pro and your pro policed your co-angler. And that was a really big deal. And I remember like trying to get into the opens and having to deal with that. It was super, super frustrating. But then as we moved on and COVID hit and the co-angler counts dropped, the sport itself, the leagues themselves started to struggle. You know what I mean? It's just, everything was expensive. You have less people signing up. It was kind of a nightmare, I think, for running a league. And then trying to get, so they broke that rule. They said, no more. We don't have to have equal matchup. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bo, as I move forward through this, or Bryant. So as that changed, we started to see an environment where pros and competitive anglers were going out and you could or could not draw a co, right? So now the safety, the cheating and non-cheating thing was kind of alleviated. Okay, they don't need that anymore. Now we're just going to get as many boats as we can. And if we can't fill them up evenly, we're just going to send you guys out. And so you kind of had this like, okay, someday you'd get a pro or a co and someday you wouldn't. Now, not talking about co's as far as they're like, let's just say, for every co-angler that's hard to be in the boat with, there's another story of a pro that doesn't treat a co well. So I'm not trying to say there's bad co's and there's not bad pros. It's people, right? Put people in boats, you're going to find a couple people that don't mesh. I'm not going to talk about it in that manner. But what I will talk about is if you take a pro like Bryant Smith and pit him against somebody else that's equally as good as him, like everybody else. I just see his face like looking at me. Anyways, if you put him in there, if you put a co,
that was the face I saw, was like, what's the point?
All right,
that's all I saw.
Sorry, I'm talking through the evolution of this.
I'm tuned in.
Yeah. Co-anglers were necessary. At one point, we thought they were necessary to the sport. A lot of it is financial. I really feel like having that other person in the boat is good for the league. I think it's good. I'm not one of the believers that it's really good for the sport at the highest levels. And obviously the levels have gone that way, but I love co-anglers, all that kind of stuff. But talking about co-anglers in boats, so that I can get to my next point, and I'll let you argue with me in a minute. But if I put Bryant Smith, say we were able to clone Bryant Smith, which would be the worst thing that ever happened in the world. Yeah. And then we launched 2 Bryant Smiths in the same day. And he's got the most respectful, nicest co-angler in one boat, and the other boat doesn't have Bryant Smith. So you have the same version of Bryant Smith. He's on the water. Even if the guy in the back of the boat never breaks any of our unwritten rules, which bass fishermen seem to have a ton of, Bryant Smith with a co-angler still has less mental capacity as the Bryant Smith without him. And I'll tell you why. Because your brain is only able to deal with one thought at a time. You can have multiple thoughts, but dealing with a thought. So for instance, if you get a negative thought, you actually have to think about that thought and go, I don't want it anymore, right? You got to actually deal with it and go, we're not going to go down that road. Kind of like, like if you're way up a river and your motor starts a little funny and you're like, man, I need to get back in time. But you want to win the tournament. And then in the back of your mind's that, man, I wonder if my motor's going to start. You have to deal with that thought, right? If you have a co-angler in your boat, and even though he's super respectful, which 99% of them are, he's still going to put a thought in your head. So for instance, he walks from one side of the boat to the other and you're thinking about where the fish might be moving to, and the boat leans over to the side. You have to think about that, right? It's a change that happens. How about if your co calls for the net? He's not doing anything wrong, but the guy that's in the boat without a co, competing in the same tournament for the same money, has an advantage, even if it's just mental. Correct me if I'm wrong. Go ahead and argue, Bryant, that point. Or Bo.
Correct.
Am I wrong about?
No, I think from a fundamental level, you're spot on. I mean, you're, and that's just you're talking on a basic level. Like, you're talking on a basic psychological level of where each one of us has a cup, and that's the amount of processing that our brain can handle without getting to an overloaded state. And you're talking on that basic level. Small cup. There's other. It's like a pixie cup. But there's layers to that onion there, big guy. Like,
and I'm ready to go into it.
Okay.
All right. We all agree. We agree two things up to this point in the podcast. One, if you could clone Bryant, you never would. Two, that if you had to prove a point, that the Bryant with a co-angler, the nicest guy in the world, and a Bryant without a co-angler, they're in the same tournament, the same thing. There's an advantage or a disadvantage, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I'm moving through this to kind of make a point about leagues and co-anglers and what that, in my opinion, has kind of evolved into. And so let's talk about that situation. Now you get to the point where, so if that really happens and you say, well, that's just luck of the draw. How do I get a co-angler, right? It's a draw. And I'm going to bring you to a story, and we'll not mention any names, but I was at a big event and I was talking to a very well-known angler. Won't mention any names, but him and his family member were in the tournament circuit. And I remember saying, yeah, I fished the first year of the Opens, and it was the year in the Opens that they were trying to kind of, guys were deciding they wanted to move leagues. And so there were prominent anglers in the Opens trying to get back into the elites. And Bryant and I were in those Opens. Bryant, you can attest to all the stuff I'm saying here. Of the 8 days, tournament days, for all 4 of those events, I had a co-angler every day. The pro guys that were trying to get back into the elites, one of them had a co-angler 3 days out of the 8, and one of them had a co-angler 4 days out of the 8. How many co-anglers in that season? Did you ever have a day without a co during that 4-run deal we did in the Opens?
Yeah, I had 2 or 3 days without one. But but for the most part, I had it going.
Right. And then we had 2 other travel partners with us that were just like me, straight up 8 days. So here you go. So I'm having this conversation where I'm like, it just doesn't seem like it's an angler draw, and it's a random draw thing that these leagues are doing with these co-anglers. And this very prominent angler smiled at me and he goes, it's an angler pairing, not an angler draw. And then he started to explain to me the way leagues in the past that he had been part of had used the pairing to help, so say we got a co-angler or a pro who is also contributing to the league. And he said, oh yeah, the one time they asked my said family member who I wanted to fish with today or tomorrow, and bam, they put him in the boat with him. That is where I was going with this co-angler thing. Back in the day, I don't think that would have been fair if the fields were even. I think it's even tougher for guys looking at our sport, seeing the uneven, not able to fill a co-angler field, and look at a league that's trying to do the best thing for the league, get as many people involved, right? Everybody's trying to take care of themselves so that we can keep the sport going. But you're still dealing with a pretty severe situation, not severe situation, but one I think worth talking about. Because that was the question in the comment at our last one. Are these done randomly? In my opinion, that's kind of a fine line. Whereas if it's not done randomly and people were to find out or start looking at it, you'd probably be like, that's kind of not good. What do you think?
You're opening a can.
Yeah,
this we have to be careful about this, right? Because we're asking questions. We're talking in a neutral sense.
Well, you guys wanted to start a podcast, so welcome.
Well, okay. So, you
don't have to throw anybody under the bus.
I
let me take a step back.
Well,
I'm not going to go ahead. Well, let me just say this. I'm not throwing any leagues under the bus. I just don't. I think that if you are using pairings and you're not doing them randomly, and it's kind of kind of an unspoken rule that it's a pairing and not a draw, I personally don't like that. I didn't like it the year I had to deal with it. I had to fish these crazy bodies of water against these incredibly tough guys, and I was not a very good fisherman. I was learning how to fish on the East Coast for my first time. Thanks. And I didn't like that every day I had to deal with it. And I'll tell you another funny story. I listened to one of your roommates tell a story about how even the uneven marshals, because last year you guys didn't have full marshals in every one of your boats, right?
Yeah. Then that happens.
We're not mentioning any names, but is it one more thing that one guy wouldn't have to deal with that another? Like dealing with your marshal on Lake St. Clair and not having
Dude, yeah, it changes things. And that was an extreme case, actually. Not extreme in a bad way, but I think that it was in at the St. Lawrence where we're making 100-mile runs. And if you have another guy with you, first of all, he's going to slow you down. That's just how boating works. If you put an extra 200 pounds in your boat, you're going to go slower. You're going to use more gas. You're going to have less time than the next guy. So, um, as long as and he was going to have a marshal both of the days, whereas I didn't have a marshal either day, so I got to run as fast as I wanted to, go as hard as I wanted to. Where even if the guys that sign up for the marshal program, called ambassadors now, when I get one of them, it affects the way I drive my boat. Even if they're not competing against me, it still affects, like, I don't want to beat them up. I'm not going to go as fast through rough water. It's going to change your day. So as long as the league, and Bassmaster is usually really good, they corrected it. As long as they even it out to where everybody, if they don't have an even amount, like at St. John's this week, we have 60 ambassadors. So that means roughly everybody should have one each of the first 2 days, and a couple of people are going to draw the short stick and get 2 each day. As long as it's evenly done to where a guy is on the boat, the guy has an ambassador one day and then doesn't have it the next day, I'm fine with that. But yeah, the pairing thing, not the random draw thing. And we all hear stories about them. I've heard my fair share of stories too about it. I'm thinking that we're getting away from that. I'm hoping we are, because it definitely does affect. There's no doubt if you have a guy, if you have a really good co-angler, and it's why I like to practice with a co-angler out west, is because that's an advantage for me. If I have a good co-angler in the back of my boat, I can have him go do stuff I don't want to do, or do something different. So it changes the tournament every single time when you have a co-angler or when you don't have a co-angler. And I mean, honestly, perfect world, we fill the field with co-anglers, but it's just not, it's a tough market to get co-anglers right now. It's just the way it is. A lot of different factors that are involved there. But I want to think I'm always the guy that will give, I always want to think the best of every tournament organization, unless I've been proven otherwise. So I'd like to think that everybody is doing it on the up and up now, where it is truly a random draw and it's not a pairing. Because I know, fishing on the West Coast for 15 years, I've heard the stories of different tournament organizations where it's like, that sounded kind of shady. Like, how did that guy get him? He's an absolute stud. And I want to get away from that, and I hope we can. And I think we are.
So
yeah, I think so too. And before we get fried, I am saying that we started this podcast to bolster fishing, right? But to just gloss it over and say that it never happens would be kind of like, what's the point, right? But I think running a tournament organization is really hard. And if I was in the background and I'm trying to get, you know what I mean? Like, when the big fallout happened in the 2 major leagues, you were trying to get the talent back and people want it back. And there was a lot of things going on, and you're running a business. You're running a business. Like, if that's what's best for your business, you know what I mean? Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a small business owner. Like, you do things you don't want to, that you wouldn't prefer you had to do, but you're running a business, right? We got mouths to feed, or whatever you want to say. So I get it. It's just super important, but it's something that I figured like we should talk about because of the couple comments that we got. How are anglers, and there is the opportunity for a league to probably cross that line, and we're talking about. I'm not saying that leagues are doing it now, so I'm prefacing that. I'm all about tournament bass leagues.
So just to play a little devil's advocate here, because you started to go down the road of the question I want to ask, what is the advantage for an organization to pair anglers to co-anglers versus drawing them? Like, how does that give a tournament circuit an advantage? Like, what's the point, I guess, is my asking. Is it because if
they want to make a superstar out of somebody, it's easier to do it.
Or the other way around.
Which will help boost their brand.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, yeah, exactly. Like the level of anglers that you have signing up for your tournament or wanting to be part of your tournament is really validates your league, right? It's like, I mean, Bryant Smith coming to BAM was a positive all the way around. You know, except for us.
Except for you.
Me and you, Bo. Somebody else stealing food out of my camper, telling me the coffee's not made in time. But you know what I mean?
Not
Like
enough mayo on my sandwich.
Yeah, that's what I thought was cool about MPFL was all those guys that had come over that, like, the first time you're like, Kyle Welcher's part of it. And you're like, that's freaking awesome because these guys are derbers, right? So a superstar makes what you're doing more valid. I think it's cool. The problem you get is like when a superstar gets a little bit different treatment or whatever like that in this environment, when you have uneven. Before, when it was even, you could just say, hey, you're going to deal with co-anglers the way you're going to deal with them. But in this environment with no co-anglers, I think it definitely changes. Just think about, just like, say, like the Marshall thing. Say you had one day you'd have to pick up a Marshall and your buddy you were with had 2 days with Marshalls. You have to, like Brian had to talk about it. You got to worry about how much ice you have. You got to worry about, when to pick them up. It's just another little added layer. Is it enough to affect your performance at the elite level? You could say probably not. But I promise you that you think about things you wouldn't think about if they were in the boat.
I mean, I was. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm still kind of focused on you used the terminology that referenced maybe a difference between draw and pairings. And do you believe that when that word is being used, that organization is using that as a gray area to maybe assign as opposed to random draw?
Yeah, I think there's no statistical way when I was in the opens that those particular anglers had so few co-anglers when the rest of us had them all. You know
so
what I
we
mean?
have a West Coast circuit that calls it pairings.
And I'm not calling out any league saying it's pairings.
I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying, is that the trigger word there? Like,
who knows? But the point was to go down the mental aspect of it. Like, you could say it doesn't matter, because I think if we all voted right now, we'd say I'd still prefer to keep co-anglers at some levels, not at the highest levels. But at the Pro-Am level, I think it's a really good thing. I think it's going to be a really good thing when we come to the Northwest, because there are a lot of guys that have never done a Pro-Am tournament. So they're all, every am that shows up to the Northwest has probably fished before. I will say 99.9% of them will have been in a tournament environment before. Most of them will be pretty good fishermen, but in the Northwest, it's really rare. A lot of them will probably have not fished a Pro-Am. I know that's a rarity in the country, but in the Northwest, it won't be. So I think it's super valuable. I'm saying up front, I'm not saying no co-anglers. I'm just saying that the reason I bring it up is because, is there a way for the leagues to use it in a weird way that we don't totally understand and have things change? Does it mean that I disagree with having co-anglers? No. I'd say keep co-anglers in the Pro-Am levels all the way through. So that being said, to answer your question, Bo, yeah, I would think there has been times when leagues have used a pairing instead of a draw, where it's just this random, hit the randomizer button, and so-and-so's with so-and-so.
Okay, so I got a question.
Okay.
If you're drawing angler, it's a two-part question. Because this was based on a question I asked Mark Lassane at the Shasta event, because I think it was only like 60% of the boats had AMs. Mm-hmm. And do you think when you're should you randomly draw each day, first of all? And second of all, if you drew a co-angler on one day, should you somehow be in a priority to not draw one on the second day? Like, this comes back to that conversation you were just having about
100%.
The statement you were making about, does it make you fish differently? or does it change the way you approach your day? So is it, because that gets really complicated, right? Like I'm not sure, but I think like they just they randomized each day, because there were some guys that drew co-anglers both days and were kind of grumpy about it.
That was me. I wasn't grumpy about it, but in that situation, Bo, like, you're exactly correct, because on the last day, remember, it was really windy, and you have to worry about your co-angler. Like, he's your responsibility. We've already talked about it with the safety stuff. Like, there are probably, the way Bryant would drive a boat with a marshal and without are two different. You know what I mean? Bryant will push it to the edge, but if he thinks he's going to put a guy in danger, he won't do it. Yeah. So
I'll still go.
Once
It'll
that
just take me a lot longer.
Right. So is that a weight or a difference? Yes, it is. But anyway, I'll let you guys take back over. I was going to go down another random boomer rant. I'm just going to stop.
No, you've been talking too much. Let us in.
Well, I mean, co-anglers are important. I think we all agree on that. Like it makes me kind of sad that there is the conversation about co-anglers that happen, because I think they're very important. And I also think if I was a guy who couldn't afford a boat or didn't have a boat that could fish these bigger tournaments, and I want to go out and get this experience, I want to get this time, I want to go have this moment, I want to be able to. And we don't even need to, I don't think it's pretty obvious the value they bring to a circuit. If you look at BAM, the golden egg, so to speak, is the product of goal is becoming the Pro Tour, right? Guys want to get into this. There's a lot of money on the line. You're fishing alone. There's good exposure, all that stuff, whatever. The Pro-Am is currently the only path to that moving forward. But from a company standpoint, if you're doing Pro-Ams and if so, for every boat, you have two guys paying a fee, right? You have two guys paying an entry fee for every boat. And that aids, I think, greatly in the operations of the business. But more importantly, you can go to communities. Like, I believe it's a lot harder to pitch in this early stage. I think it's a lot harder to pitch to a community, the Pro Tour versus a Pro-Am. Because if you can go to a community and say, we're bringing 200 and some odd people here, it's going to have a greater impact to them by saying, we got 60 guys showing up. And so there's still a lot of business value, in my opinion, in making sure that we foster and grow, keep co-anglers showing up to these events.
Yeah.
And
I never thought about that. It's smart, Bo.
Yeah.
You're right. Because like when you go to a community, right, the biggest thing is to pitch the amount of beds. I mean, we're going to fill this many hotel rooms. This is how many meals we're going to sell. You're right. Like, that's a big value.
That's, and for better or for worse, and it's tough too, because you think, there's residual value of building media around something. And, when you're as big as BASS, MLF, like when you have that kind of platform, then that's something worth talking about. And Mark is working really hard to grow something great there. And, if you can just go onto his YouTube page and his social media pages, he's growing something. But really, especially with what's happened with our economy and where we're at, coming off of more of a struggling economy, communities need money now. They want to know that you're coming to town. We're going to help be a part of this. We're going to get involved in something that's going to keep drawing something in on a more short-term basis. And, I think that's where the most value comes in growing the Pro-Am side of things. And I think that's where Billy Egan has a really, being able to fill both sides of tournaments, which he's very good at doing, I think is really great for that business model. Yeah. And it keeps him really doing what he's doing, right? Like, because he can go to those communities and he can say, yeah, for every boat that's showing up, there's going to be a second guy with him spending that much money on food, lodging, whatever.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I only fished one wand tournament where I didn't have a co-angler one day. I think it was one day. And luckily for me, luckily for my co-angler that I wasn't doing very well, so it didn't really matter. But a part of me was like, man, I hope I get a hammer tomorrow. Like, somebody help me, like, turn the lights on. And then and then, but it didn't happen very often. He's very, very rarely uneven. And I think that's kind of the crux of what we were trying to bring up. If it's going to be, if all the fields were always even, which is what we really want, is we want to have equal co-anglers so that everybody shares the same burden, and if the pairings are done correctly, not pairings, the draws are done correctly, then you really don't have an argument. But I guess as we move into this new era, if we can't keep filling up these co-angler spots, you're going to have to deal with this. The leagues are going to have to deal with it. People are going to ask questions. We just needed something good to talk about in the podcast, and it had been brought up. So I figured, if you guys want the podcast.
Well, but also you and I spoke about something, like, we spoke about something earlier today, and you brought up a really good point, which I think kind of falls into this a little bit, right? Like, as a tournament organization goes, you got the things that are very important, like the core values that you need to uphold to represent the communities, the anglers, to represent the product, all that. But then you have the fringe stuff, right? And I wonder how much of this falls into that fringe side of things, right? Like, for some reason, us as anglers love to talk about all this gray stuff, like all the stuff that's like not hard black and white. Like, we love to fixate on this middle stuff and make comments on social media and cycle up the vortex, right? Like, we love to do that. And okay, so they're pairing anglers to co-anglers. Like, let's play total devil's advocate. Okay, let's say one of these organizations, let's say let's say Billy Egan's sitting down and going, okay, I got these pros and these AMs, and I'm going to draw the lines myself, like some mastermind thing. Like, what is it really changing? Like, is it really making a difference? I don't know. I'm just like, I'm curious. Does it really matter?
Shared weight, it would.
Yeah.
Shared weight, that's a total advantage. If you have paired up with 3 studs out of the back of the boat, you're going to, statistically, you should have a better day. But it's, I don't think it happens that way. I want to believe that it doesn't happen that way. And, but going back to like the co-anglers, just like, that's how I started. That's how a lot of people get started. And you learn so much about it, about fishing, and you're exposed to so many different ways of fishing that I don't think it, barring just going on a bunch of guide trips, I don't think you're ever going to see. And there is a difference, because I do them both. There's a difference between a guide trip and watching a guy in tournament mode. Like, it's totally different, and a great example of that is, when I was young, I went on a few guide trips with Bobby Barrett, and they were awesome. I learned a lot. He's super, very good educator. He teaches you on the water. And then I also got lucky enough to draw him in a tournament. And I learned a lot, but it was because I wanted to. I was paying attention to what he was doing. And they were 2 totally different people. When I guide, I'm there to educate people. I'm there to teach. And I want to make sure it's focused on them. But when I'm in a tournament, if I have a co-angler, it's like, you just do your thing back there. If you need the net, call for it. And if I'm ready to leave,
better not be a small one, though.
Try to be in that seat. That's it. But there's 2 different things, and that's why, I know it's tough to fill a co-angler field. I talked about it earlier. A lot of different factors going into that. But to touch on something that you said, Bo, I think it needs to be, if there is not a full field of co-anglers, the leagues need to make sure that if one guy has one day, if it's 50-50 down the center, just an ideal, like, if there's 50% co-anglers for the field, 50% co-anglers for the co-angler, 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 50% co-anglers for the co- The league needs to make sure that if you hit a co-angler one day, you do not have one the next day. And there can't be guys going out with co-anglers, no co-anglers, when guys are going out with two. Just to go back to that mental capacity, whatever you take, you're way over my head on that one. Again, tiny cup. But I think that needs to be addressed in these. It's just a different time. It really is. They never used to. You never used to. I remember so many times back in the FLW days where I would have to. I'm a procrastinator, so I'd sign up last minute, and I would have to go find the co-angler because it's evenly matched. Like, go find your co-angler, and then you can get in and link. And same with the Bassmaster. They were all readily available. But now that there's not as many co-anglers, the leagues need to realize that, and they need to adjust how they do things for that, and they need to do it fairly.
Yeah.
Okay, so
let me say one thing.
Go. Yeah.
I feel like this is a problem that was not created by tournament organizations, but it's like this hurdle they got to get over. It's kind of like everybody going to social media, controlling the narrative around the sport. You know what I mean? It's a problem the leagues are forced to deal with that they did not create. And so I feel for them because we want the leagues. We need the leagues to survive, and not only survive, but thrive. So not bashing the leagues. We're trying not to bash the leagues. Point is, this problem is here, and we kind of got to deal with it. And that's what we're talking about. We're dealing with the fact that how do you recruit more co-anglers? It's not going to be that easy. And I feel that that's the way that's the reason Bass got rid of them in the opens. They just could not figure that problem out. It was just this group of anglers that had decreased, and it's a problem for them that stinks. I don't think we're going to have the answer by the end of this podcast for them, but hell, we're going to talk about it.
Well, and that you and I are don't apologize, because you and I are on the same line. Like our brains are in the same place right now, which is terrifying for me. But
you shouldn't be afraid.
That was kind of where I was going. Like, Bryant, you said we have less co-anglers. We don't have less co-anglers. They're still out there. Why are they not showing up? And I don't want to hear just the FFS argument. Like, what? Because we just had this conversation a couple episodes ago about West Coast bodies of water and how, I mean, good God. I'm a terrible Shasta fisherman. I'll be the first to say it, but like, I get outfished by my co-angler on Shasta almost every time I go. I mean, there are bodies of water that are very co-angler friendly. The river is one of those. Jake, you can attest, like the river in the summer, anybody can catch fish at any angle, anywhere on the boat. So where are the co-anglers?
I think I have an answer.
I think I have an answer too. Go for it, Jake.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do to make this really fun. I'm going to have my answer, and then he's going to have his. And then, Bo, you're going to vote on whose was best.
I like that. It is Brian's birthday tomorrow, so I'm already biased.
Do you agree?
Sure, let's do it.
Yes. Oh, good. Here we go. I think that the sport has evolved to have more opportunity, and that a lot of the times you had co-anglers that wanted to learn, but also the barrier to entry in our sport is so high. Just all of it, travel, the time you can get off work, all that stuff has always been really tough. Co-angler could just show up, doesn't have to practice, jumps in a boat, and they can be competitive. But now you have kayak angling. Now you have Tiny Boat Nation, which we just had a speaker at our last seminar with Tiny Boat. Tiny Boat Nation is really cool.
What is it?
It's 14-foot boats, or 16-foot maximum, and 25 horse max.
They're competing within this classification. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It's big in the Northwest, and it's really cool because they can do electric only lakes. They can do all kinds of cool stuff. But there's so many more opportunities. Clubs have tripled in size, and the amount of clubs in just Washington State alone is like tripled since I started. And so there's a lot more opportunities for that guy that's like, man, I want to be competitive. But I feel like a massive, crazy growth of kayak angling has taken those anglers and been like, I'm going to go do this. I'm still by myself. I'm against this bloodbath competitive group of awesome guys. And kayak angling is gone so hot. I mean, I think it's really cool. So I feel like those guys that were like, man, this is the way we want in, and I got to do it like 10, 15 years ago. But I can't afford it or whatever. Those guys have found other outlets besides just being a co-angler, and that's kind of reduced the pool a little bit. That's my answer. Bryant, go.
Totally agree. My answer's not as good. No, I totally agree. This is not going to be a very good competition.
Well, this took the fun out of it.
No, I totally agree. But there is another thing that's happening. And to be fair, I haven't fished on the West Coast very much, so I don't. It's hard for me to see it from that side. But I do know a reason why co-anglers are really hard to come by in the opens, and that is because they are all the guys that used to be a co-angler who went there to learn is now fishing in the pro side. You've never seen more 25-year-old and younger anglers fishing the pro side than you have in the past 3 years. I mean, it's no secret that forward-facing sonar is a contributing factor to that. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's easier for them to get in and compete at a high level with it. And I think that, and that's not the only contributing factor, but I do think, especially on the East Coast, you look at the Bassmaster Opens, like I looked at the pictures from Sam Rayburn, and dude, like the entire top 10 was under 20, 25 years old. It seemed like almost everybody. And I think that's a lot of, we don't have, like the way I did it, when I was 18 years old to when I was 21, I fished as a co-angler to learn. Now they're just stepping to the front of the boat. So we're not getting that chunk of younger anglers who want to learn. They just go to the front. They just do it. So I think that's another contributing factor to why co-anglers aren't showing up as much, because they're fishing from the front of the boat. And you can see it in, like I saw it on the West Coast at Shasta tournament. There's a ton of young anglers. It's awesome to see. They're just fishing from the front now instead of fishing as a co-angler.
So you both win. I hate to say
no,
it.
that's
You both
shit.
had, I mean,
bleep that out, but that's crap.
Okay.
I think Jake's.
So
I
you
think,
you opened the whole Pandora's box. 25-year-olds are good because of forward imaging. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, no, but it's interesting. I have a very acute example of this, right? So there is a guy here in Oregon. He is locally extremely talented, right? He knows how to go out and catch the big fish. Hi, buddy. Hold on. My son just got home and he wants to say hi. Oh, cool, dude. Here, come over here. You want to come say hi?
Podcast debut.
Yep.
Come on.
He's going to take your spot, Bryant.
You want to come look? You want to say hi?
He's not interested.
Here, come on over here.
We're actually currently interviewing for Brian's replacement. Yep. Oh, found him.
There he is.
Thanks.
You
got way better.
We just need to put a lose hat on you and you'll be good to go. Oh, yeah, cool. Show him your Pokemon cards. Nice.
Oh, I got a great story about Pokemon today.
Boy. All right, buddy.
Do you want to hear it? It's awesome. So Bassmaster is trying to push social media stuff, and they just coming up with a lot of creative ways to kind of interact with everybody. And they were doing an interview, and the lady that does all the social media, she was interviewing, a couple random guys at registration. And there was another guy there with a binder full of pictures of Pokemon. And I walked by and I was like, yeah, I know what all those are. And they were like, oh, you're coming. You're going to do this. I was like, oh boy, this is going to embarrass me, because nobody in the field had really done very well at identifying every Pokemon. So I come back over there. God. I set the record and I nailed every single one of them. It was probably the most embarrassing moment. It'll be on BassMaster social media soon.
That's why you told it on the podcast, because you can't deny it, right? Like,
oh no,
this is over. You can't tell us to cut it out because we're just gonna be able to look it up.
I mean, do I dare ask
Every
you how you
single-
know
No,
all
don't
this?
ask stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
We could go down a
don't
rabbit
wanna know.
hole you don't want to.
No, I don't want to.
I
I'm
was
just
a
gonna.
can't
nerd.
I'm
forget.
just.
I was a nerd.
I mean, you
I love
still are a
Pokemon.
nerd, but you were that kind of nerd.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is a rabbit hole. I have Pokemon.
Yeah, we're gonna stop. Let's go
Red
back to
on
this
my
co-angler
cell phone,
conversation.
and I play it on planes because you don't need any Wi-Fi to play it.
Oh no,
What game is it?
Yeah, Pokemon, the original.
he plays Pokemon on his phone. The original.
Couldn't even tell you what a Pokemon was.
I don't either. My kid gets them from school, and then I don't know what to do with them. Anyway,
See,
so-
he'd be a perfect replacement.
he would.
He's got more hair than all of us.
He
He's
does.
got way more hair.
He does. Anyway, yeah. So, God, I don't even know where we were.
We
Pokemon
were at the
ruined
point where
us.
you wouldn't pick a winner, even though I clearly won. But we're okay with that. Actually, Bryant's right though. If say the guys that can afford
Wait,
to go to the
what
front,
was that?
I don't even think it's about affording it because this is the thing that I find interesting is, and I didn't. Now I'm reframing my thought on the technology part, right? And we can call it FFS, whatever we want. We can call it fishing technology. Obviously, that you have a generation that thinks that they can rely on this to be successful, right? Like they've been shown that they can rely on this to be successful. And if it's something that's fairly, I don't want to say easy to pick up, but it makes a lot of sense, then yeah, why would you need to go out and sit in somebody else's boat and learn things if you already know the thing that might win you tournaments, right? Like,
I think that's
I
going
think it-
too far off the center. Like the last thing that I would ever admit is that just because you have forward imaging, it's easier. I just think that
right, that
It's not
message, I'm
easier.
asking about the message, right?
Yeah.
Like, is the message being sent that? Because that was the point I was getting at. There's a kid here.
yeah,
There's a kid here in Oregon. He's a great fisherman. I mean, I don't know. I've never fished with him, but he clearly knows how to go find big fish. He's, however, his job, whatever he's done, he's invested a lot of money into the technology into his boat. He's got the 6 screens. He's got the, trolling motors on the power poles, the whole nine, right? Like, and we had a conversation where he was talking about how he was excited about his fishing season, and he couldn't afford to do the pro-ams, but he was going to do a bunch of local stuff, and, he's trying to chase a state record or whatever. Cool. And I think I offended him a little bit because I actually wrote him back and I was like, dude, if you can't afford the front of the boat for the pro-ams, you should go fish from the back of the boat. And it was like, I kind of got blown off by him from it, and that's fine. Like, that's cool. You don't have to. But my point to him was like, you are going to learn so much in that year. Like those 4 events, you're going to learn probably more than you would learn in a couple of years of trying to figure this out on your own. And I don't know why that message seems so unattractive to this generation of anglers. But like, I'm 43 years old. I tried to do it I jumped in the front of the boat on my own. I'd love to draw Ish Monroe on the Delta and just sit back and watch him flip. Like, I'd love to, yeah, or frog or whatever. I'd love to watch the opportunity now that I've done this for 5 years. And I mean, my wife will be the first to tell you, I'm that guy who wants to take the hardest road to everything possible and do it myself. But man, it would have been nice to pick up a thing or two along the way watching these guys do this, or at least be on the boat with them while they're doing it. Because I think you're right. Bryant, you talked about the guiding versus watching a guy in a tournament. Guiding, you're giving an education. Watching a guy in a tournament, you're gaining an education by observing them in their element, right? And everyone approaches this differently. You're going to get an experience of that that you could never be taught, I don't think.
Yeah, and I don't want to be burned down saying it's just the forward imaging that's making this young generation so good. It's also the fact that there has never been more information readily available with all of the YouTube, all of the live coverage.
So it's technology.
Technology in general, yeah. Like,
Yeah,
you're a Bass Live, great example. You're a co-angler for 10 of the best in the world. In MLF, same thing. You're a co-angler for 10 of the best in the world, watching them in tournament time. That's pretty special, and that's something that wasn't around 10 years ago.
Hang on. Pause.
Did he have an old man moment and just not share that with us?
I think he needed to go pee.
That's what I think. Look what I got.
Is that the gold one?
The custom light short spool. Showed up about a half hour before we had to jump on here. Let's see.
Is that the SP? Or is it the SF?
SS?
Oh, it's the spinning reel one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a spinning
gold
reel.
Yeah. That thing's sweet.
This is nice.
It's the same custom light series.
But with
just
a
got a
really
small
shallow
spool.
spool. Oh, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. You don't have to waste a bunch of line.
So the drags on these kind of are like seem to be rated a little lower, but I'm assuming there's still, oh God, there's plenty of drag there.
Oh yeah, you can lock it down. And you can
Ooh, and that feels
absolutely
really nice.
snap 12-pound fish. The best part is they're just consistent.
No, that's a smooth drag for a whatever $150 reel. Look, Boomer.
Sorry. You guys there?
Did you have an old man moment?
No, my wife's going to the urgent care because she's been sick for 2
She
weeks.
finally gave in.
Well, I don't know. She's like mad. Anyways. I said,
Look what I got today.
Hi.
That's the short spool.
Anyways.
Shallow. Sorry. Thank you.
So where did Bryant quit talking? We can cut him down.
We see you and hear you.
Oh,
Did
there
you
you are.
lose us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys
Okay, so
froze up.
since I had to abruptly leave, to sum up the game where I won, Bryant lost. Brian said, but what the guess is that we're not backfilling co-anglers for a multitude of reasons. There's anglers just going to the front of the boat because they're getting educated more. There's more opportunities with the kayak world, all that kind of stuff. And so the only real format I think in co-anglers that's growing, and you can see that, is shared weight, right? You can see that Bass Nation went there. Billy does not have the same problems as other tournament organizations do, and it'll just be something that's on the horizon for a while, I think, for all the leagues, right?
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
it's something they have to figure out over time.
Let's solve the world's problems. How do we get co-anglers to show up? Let's just be specific. How do we get more guys on the West Coast to show up at the Pro-Ams? There isn't an answer?
I don't think so. No, I think everything we do is evolving constantly. People are evolving. I think the economy is a huge layer on top of all of our conversations all the time. And I really don't think there is an answer. I know that if I don't know. I think Bryant was 100% correct. And I also think that I was 120% correct.
You were 20% more right than me, huh?
I'm just saying that they're all the right reasons, but the biggest thing is we're not backfilling.
Yeah, they're all contributing factors to why going.
I mean, think about it. If like back in the day there was no kayak sport, there was no competitive kayak stuff, but now like that's an option, and I think it's a pretty cool one. I mean, if I got to hang out with some of those guys at the ISE show, the kayak stuff is pretty cool. The technology in that sport is awesome. Those guys will go. What we talked to that the one, I think it was Max. He said that he can go. His range is like 9 miles one way. That's insane. Was that what it was? Those things are cool.
It's insane. It's like there are guys that can cover the small lakes in Oregon here, and I say small because they're not small, but they're not California lakes, but they can cover them in an entire day. And I I don't get it personally. I mean, if I'm gonna
And
take
there
a
goes our
plastic,
kayak contingent.
I lost.
Just alienate them.
no, it's not an alien. Like, I could buy an old Skeeter for $15,000, or I could buy this kayak. I struggle with it personally.
Yeah, but
like,
you don't have to
the
put
amount of money.
You don't have to put $120 of gas in a kayak.
Okay, you're right.
You don't need a diesel pickup to pull it across the country.
I'm also not gonna lie. Like, there's that, what is it, the Northwest Kayak Circuit or whatever they have, the NWK something. But like, I'm a bit of a percentage nerd. Like, I like to know what payouts look like, and
It's dying.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
the payouts in kayak tournaments are ridiculous. The payout percentages are huge, and I don't know how they're doing it, but like, you pay $100 and you win a couple thousand. Like, it's kind of wild to me. But yeah, I don't know. I could never imagine spending 10 to 15 grand on a kayak. But
Definitely an option in our
Right.
conversation.
no, it is.
But
Yeah, I don't know.
we did rant this right into something else, which I think is
Par for the course.
as part of our casting. Yeah. And we said we were going to keep this an hour, and we're at an hour and 12. Look at that. Or an hour something. So anyways,
It's 8:30
that was
here.
my, that was my rant. I know you got to fish tomorrow, so we'll let you go here in a minute, but I just have all those funny stories, and people bring it up, and you're like, well, I don't know. Like, the last story that I heard, that Bryant and I heard at the same time from a good friend of ours, was that, once again, not mentioning any names, but there was a big name pro fishing an open with him. Or it might have been, it was an open level tournament. I'm not sure what league it was. And he was the guy in front of him. And everybody knows in that league that you look at the boat in front of you, and that's your co-angler for the next day. So you see who you got, and then you see, you know what I mean? So he's like, well, that dude doesn't have a co-angler. So he's like, sweet, I want to have a co-angler tomorrow. So you kind of plan your day, right? He gets his announcement on his phone, and he's like, oh, sweet, no co-angler. Well, something happened where all of a sudden somebody made a phone call saying they don't want a co-angler. And he goes, oh, he gets a phone call from the tournament organization. We made a mistake. You have a co-angler. Well, the big name pro that was around him the next day didn't have a co-angler, and he did. It was a different kind of a mix-up, but he was like, what in the, he was all, but I get it. Like, if you're a big name pro and you're fishing down a level and you're like, hey, I'm doing this to sport, for whatever that dynamic looks like, and you go, I don't want to fish with a co for whatever reason. Those guys, a tournament organization has to weight some of those concerns, right? And Bryant Smith marches into some small tournament and they're just glad he's there, and they see the value, and he says, but here's my requirements. We now have this uneven playing field that he could actually ask for currently. Not that he would. I'm just saying it's there. So there you go.
Yeah, that doesn't seem fair to me.
Rant completed.
This was great because you cut out for the last 2 minutes, so I didn't have to hear any of your rant. That was awesome.
For you. I had to
That's a
sit
good
through
one.
it.
Your name came up.
You just keep ranting, and I think Riverside will just
He
cut you
actually,
out.
believe it
Doesn't
or
want to
not,
hear you.
his rant complimented you massively. I think he called you big time angler.
Big
Bryant
time
Smith.
Mm-hmm. That should be, you don't really have a nickname. Like, we've got Big
No, I don't want
Show.
one.
We've got, you know what I mean?
Sonic
We've got the
Blam.
Prodigy. You got the Sonic Blam. You don't really have a name in the sport yet.
No.
I think that in the comments, if anybody, the 9 people that watch this, should help us with that.
Yeah, let's get a Bryant Smith nickname poll going. I love
Yeah.
I
that.
already know where it's going to go.
Call him the Mayo Wagon. Yeah.
Jeez.
Something good.
Uh-huh.
My daughter and I have come up with, so we've been skiing lately, and if you crash really bad, you are a granola chicken. I don't know what it is, but if you crash really bad, you did the granola chicken.
That's
See,
weird.
we'll come up with something good. I don't know if we can use the word chicken in any of the descriptions of Bryant, but we'll come up with something good. Should we call it here, Bo? You're the moderator of this nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I don't know. Unless you have another rant.
The only thing I wanted to
God,
say is
please
this
no.
was never meant to bring in anybody down. This was like we are 100% about bass fishing on this podcast. We're just talking about the new dynamics that we're dealing with.
Yeah, we're just having a discussion. And I want to see more co-anglers showing up to these events.
100%.
I actually might even try to go co-angle a one bass event just because I think it would be fun. Like,
It would be cool.
I don't think there's anything wrong with, we need more co-anglers to show up to these events.
Think of the stress-free life of being a co-angler and you get a phone call and, you're going to be paired with Joe Uribe. Think of what you, like.
So cool. So cool. I feel bad. I don't know how.
I'm not even bringing rods, dude.
In 2 years of Wild West, I drew the same co-angler 4 times. And I felt so bad for that guy. Because he could have had so many opportunities. And I'm sure that guy, like the third time around, was like, oh man, I got Biao Fletcher again? Like, this poor guy. Nicest dude too. And he was just, he was had a smile on his face, but I know in the back of his head, he was like, God, man, couldn't I just draw on like Ken Ma once?
Just one time.
Please?
That's awesome.
Couldn't I get on the boat with the great Bryant Smith?
I had a guy at Havasu, and I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. I am not on anything. I am stinking in this tournament. He's like, hey, no worries, man. We're just here this is what we do. This is our vacation every year. We come, we hang out. I brought lunch. I got a charcuterie board. I've got all like, I needed you to be a little bit more on point here, buddy. But I'm like, we ate good the whole day. We didn't catch hardly anything, but we ate good.
Hey, there you go. There you go.
Each his own, man. What were you going to say?
I'm going to go fishing tomorrow.
So, yeah.
Knock them like dead, please.
Yeah.
If I get up...
you got your
If I get up at 5 a.m. and watch Blast Off, are they going to sing you happy birthday?
Hopefully.
I think Jake, we need to start making phone calls.
Please, boat number 39. Bryant Granola Chicken Smith. I wonder if it starts
birthday to you.
Please.
Happy birthday. Good luck tomorrow.
How old are you, dude? How old are you?
Yeah, forgot that.
34. Going on.
God, he's a
54.
child. No wonder you keep saying he's an idiot kid. Now it all makes
nothing
sense.
to do with his age.
Yeah, but he just cemented it.
21.
Man, Brian, I hope you have a knockout week, dude. Knockout
I
week.
appreciate it.
I'm going to put you on my fantasy team.
I wouldn't recommend that.
I shouldn't, but
A lot
If
better
you feel
for
yourself
not on
sucking.
Jake's.
Suck less.
Suck less.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just suck less.
All right.
There's
Go to bed.
a Daffy
Thanks,
Duck.
man.
There's a
See you,
Daffy
boys.
Duck.
Thanks,
quote,
fellas.
too.
What's that?
Okay,
What's the
suck
Daffy
until
Duck
you
quote?
see.
Good night.
On that note, bye, boys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Alpha BassCast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and rate us. We'll see you next time.